What's up guys, today we're gonna enjoy legendary Paul Morphy showing us how to play the Italian game the right way so that you can crush your opponents quickly. Alright, so initially we go into the two knights game and now he played pawn d4. He does not want to defend this pawn on e4, instead he wants to counter-attack. And let me also take a moment to tell you a few quick ideas about this opening, because I think it's a great choice for you to play. And if you're below 1600, you're gonna obliterate most of your opponents with quick opening attacks. So in the actual game, black chose to take this pawn on d4, which is the main move that you're gonna be facing most frequently. How about they decide to grab the other pawn instead? Strangely, this natural move is already quite a significant error, because once you recapture right here on e5, it's hard for this knight to go back, as your pawn takes away all the natural squares for the knight to go to, and you threaten something like queen d5 with a double attack to this knight and checkmate on f7, and you can win games easily. For instance, if they play bishop c5, another attempted move trying to team up against this pawn, this fails due to queen d5, same thing, attacking this pawn on f7, as well as this knight on e4, or you can revert the moves and first play bishop takes f7, calling the king out, and then following up with queen to d5, check, and double attack. Once the king moves, you get back your piece with interest. Now you're up a pawn, their king is exposed, it can't castle anymore because it moved. You're gonna just play knight c3, bishop g5, castle, and you've got a winning position easily. Back to the game, black captured this pawn on d4 and Morphy simply castled. That led to famous Morphy's scene where he looked in the eyes of his opponent and said, at this point you have a choice. Take the white pill and you'll know what a real attack is. If not, I'll take the black pill and you'll be suffering for nothing. His opponent was kind of confused, chose the first one, and as promised got under a massive attack. Now, how about the other option? The other common option for black here is playing bishop c5, trying to hold on to this pawn on d4 so that you can't take it back with your knight. What would you do in this case? Again, let me take just a quick moment to tell you so that you are ready to play this opening and win regardless of what your opponents choose to play. In this case, the downside of this move, bishop c5, is that they do nothing about this pawn on e5, which is ready to be pushed and chase away this knight. That usually leads to a ton of problems for your opponents. They're not really sure how to deal with it. They usually just go knight g4, trying to move the knight away and also double attack this pawn. There are different ways to go about this. The way that I love the most, which is pawn c3, I think is the easiest. We don't care about this pawn as much, because if he happens to capture it, we're going to bring our rook to e1 and they'll be in trouble. Their king is back there on e8. But if they choose to play pawn takes c3, which is the most played move, and is already a losing blunder because of the same tactic bishop takes f7. We already know it from one of the previous variations, and here it works just as well. After king takes, you still have the standard move queen d5 with a double attack of the king and bishop, and that is already great. But on top of that, there is another variation which is even trickier. It's knight g5 check. Now the king needs to move. They usually move it to g8, trying to hide it in the corner as if it was castling. But now, besides queen takes g4, which was also possible, there is a much stronger move. Can you see it? I'll give you a few seconds. You can upset your opponents who expect you to capture the knight by moving in this direction. It's a check, and all of a sudden on the next move, that is a checkmate. Now we can see why knight takes e4 is not just a greedy move to capture a pawn, but in a way it's kind of defensive move, because if they don't capture this pawn, it's going to go forward and attack them. Anyways, black capture right here on e4, and now white goes rook e1, a standard idea, pinning the knight down to the king and attacking it. Black goes pawn d5, and for a second it feels like black is doing really well here. There are two pawns up, they guarded the knight, they also attacked your bishop on c4. Looks like you miscalculated something right here. However, you upset black with bishop takes d5. Really beautiful move, you sacrifice the bishop and you follow up with yet another brilliant move, knight to c3. Now at this point, of course, someone would say, oh, well, that's just a book move, everyone knows it. Yeah, but I remember when I saw it for the first time, it was really marvelous. Like, you play the least expected move. You put a knight to a position where it can be captured, however, it turns out that it is pinned like both ways. Like, the knight cannot capture it because it's pinned down to the king, and the pawn cannot capture it because it's pinned down to the queen. Therefore, they have to actually realize that they cannot capture this knight at all, and instead they have to move their queen away. So a really fascinating move. If your opponent is unaware of this, this will definitely shock them. It's also worth mentioning that this knight has been listening to motivational clips all night long, and it really decided to bring its best into this game. We'll see it in a moment. Now the queen needs to go. black played queen h5. Now knight takes e4, white recaptures their sacrificed piece. And at this point, black needs to be really careful. They truly need to block the e-file. In the game, he played bishop e6. For example, what if instead black chose to play something else? Sometimes their opponents are going to go bishop g4 or bishop b4 trying to attack you. But if they do so, that would be a terrible blunder because you're not going to guard the rook. You're going to exploit that discover check as well as a double check with knight of 6. Truly great move, once again wins the game on the spot. You attack the king, it's also a double check, meaning the king needs to move. It is also a fork to their queen, but if the king moves, you don't even have to capture it because you've got this sneaky checkmate. Therefore, black really needs to block the e-file, and he played the correct move, bishop e6. White nevertheless decided to take advantage of the same open file and played knight g5. From here, the knight hits the bishop, but the bishop is also pinned, and with got a rook, adding pressure to the e-file. Now it feels like black is sort of in trouble, and it was best for him to try to castle, because that way he would at least bring his king to safety. However, he played a tempting move, bishop b4, trying to counterattack this rook and also getting ready possibly to castle kingside. At this point, certainly, as we know, Morphy would not just simply defend his rook, he would come up with something more interesting. In the game, he sacrificed the rook on e6, which is indeed a very interesting way to begin the attack. The alternative was knight takes e6, and frankly it was easier because in this line you just keep attacking without any sacrifices, and so that was the easiest solution probably. But again, we should not forget that this knight was really pumped up and it just refused to go, therefore Morphy had no choice but to keep it there. So he sacked the rook right here, and after knight takes e6, we've got this beautiful octopus knight. It threatens knight takes g7, forking king and queen. It also threatens knight takes c7, this time forking the king and the rook. Besides that, it takes away those two squares, making it impossible for black to castle either way. Truly an octopus knight. Now, black needs to, of course, do something about all that. He played queen f7 to attack the knight as well as to guard these pawns, and Morphy just brought the other knight into play, threatening queen as well as guarding this one on e6. The queen needs to move, and Morphy played a move queen e2, which looks mysterious at first, but in reality it contains a very specific threat. Now, once we've got a queen along this file, this knight can capture either this pawn or this pawn. All right. So, for instance, just to show you the idea, let's say black played whatever. There's knight takes c6, c7, for instance, and now due to this pin, the queen cannot capture it, can't move away. It has to stand there and guard the king, and this way we can, trade queens and grab the rook, something like that. Therefore, his opponent played bishop d6, trying to guard this pawn. But this way, Morphy was able to play knight g7 and deliver a check from the other side. Still, the queen cannot move, it's still pinned down to the king along the e-file, therefore he tried to play king d7, and now he tries to bring the rook into play somehow, but Morphy says, hey, no way, goes queen g4, yet another check, and king needs to move. The only available square is king d8, and at this point, Bro thought he's Morphy and sacrificed the knight. I have no better explanation to this move because he could have easily attacked without any additional sacrifices, but we've got what we've got. Black captures and now bishop to g5. I mean, seriously, Morphy is known for that style of sacrificing of pieces to speed up his development, got ahead of development compared to his opponent, and finishing the game quickly. And that's just one of those very common examples. Well, while theoretically black is up a rook, but both rooks do nothing, standing in the corner, while white is already putting massive attack together. Now, black needs to shield their king, so they played bishop e7, knight to e6, won another check. The king needs to move. Computer suggests king e8 as the best alternative, but of course it's easy to see why black didn't want to go there. That allows knight takes c7, forking the king and rook, and from human perspective that certainly doesn't look good. Anyway, it was better compared to what happened in the game, because he played king to c8, which turned out to be actually a blunder, but something that is certainly not easy to see, because the follow-up is really unexpected. Morphy played knight c5, opening up this discover check. And now black is at the crossroad. They can't go here because that will lead to queen to d7 checkmate. Therefore, the only move they have available is king to b8. And at this point, I'll give you a couple seconds. You may think about this and try to find the continuation of white's attack here. It's really spectacular. You will enjoy it if you can find it on your own. If not, no worries. We'll analyze it together. By the way, the cool thing about this is that in the annotations of this game, it is called Morphy's casual game. I wish my casual games looked like that, because he played knight d7 check, the king needs to move, now knight b6, this time is a double check, the king still can't go here because of this checkmate. Therefore, king b8 is the only square which feels safe, but after queen c8, sacrificing the queen, that led to this smothered checkmate. At the time, people found these games to be absolutely stunning. They thought that Morphy is a genius and they could not comprehend his games at all. Nowadays, obviously, chess moved forward, and sometimes you will see a master level player playing a game like that in Blitz. So if you want to know how to play similar attack in chess, head to my free masterclass by clicking the link up there. I'll share with you a few simple ideas that will help you to find those attacking moves and to calculate them properly. Either way, have a great rest of the day, and I'll talk to you soon.